the government of India has introduced 3 bills in the parliament in the year 2023 with a proud proclamation that the Indian Penal Code, the Criminal Procedure Code 1973 and the Indian Evidence Act reflect the colonial legacy, and this colonial legacy needs to be eradicated. Therefore, these laws should be replaced by the laws initiated and approved by the Indian Parliament reflecting the Indian values. So these 3 laws, Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita to replace Indian Penal Code, Bharatiya Nagarika Suraksha Samhita to replace the Criminal Procedure Code 1973, and Bharatiya Saksha Adhiniyam to replace Indian Evidence Act were approved by the Parliament without any discussion, and that too when more than 140 members of the Lok Sabha were suspended from the House. Similarly, no discussion about these bills took place among the public. So these laws were formulated without active participation of the stakeholders. So here the key question is whether the declaration made by the government, especially the BJP government, stating that these laws were necessary to abolish the colonial legacy reflected in the old laws, is true or not. The truth of the matter is that these 3 new laws do not bring about any major changes. In fact, these 3 laws import more than 90% of the provisions of the Indian Penal Code, the Criminal Procedure Code, and the Indian Evidence Act. For that matter, the Criminal Procedure Code 1973 was an act of the free and independent India. So where is the question of the colonial legacy? So what the government claims for making these new laws was an utter lie. There is absolutely no truth in it. And in the today's session, we will discuss Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita and its important features and what were the changes made by it, whether the changes were progressive or regressive. So Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita came into force with effect from 1st July 2024. Even after the coming into force of Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita 2023, the old Indian Penal Code would continue to apply for all those offences that took place before 12 a.m. of 1st July 2024. For those offences that took place after 12 a.m. of 1st July 2024 only, the new act shall apply. So, the Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita has only 358 sections as against the IPC 511 sections. Some of the changes made by Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita are progressive, welcomeable, but most of the changes introduced by the Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita are highly regressive, anti-democratic, and aimed at stifling the voice of the public. And this act, along with Bharatiya Nagarika Suraksha Samhita, gives unbridled and unfettered powers to the police, which is likely to be misused and abused. So now let us discuss what are the changes that were introduced in the Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita that are welcomeable and progressive. So Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita has extraterritorial jurisdiction, unlike the IPC. This act says in section 48 that if any person resident outside India incites or encourages or abets any offence within India, then this act has a jurisdiction to try and prosecute that person residing outside India. And this act defines gender in section 2, clause 10 as including male, female, including transgender. The Supreme Court in Nalsa versus Union of India held that transgenders are also citizens of this country. So therefore, the rights of citizenship guaranteed under the Constitution are available not only to the male and females but also to the transgenders. So this act has recognized it by including transgenders within the ambit of gender. And this act for the first time in section 4 has introduced community service for certain petty offences, initially only for 6 types of offences. What are they? When a person fails to offend in spite of proclamation directing him to attend before the court or before the authority. So when a person after taking alcohol creates any nuisance at a public place, when a person commits an offence of a sum of less than 5,000 and that too for the first time and is ready to repay that amount, and in the case of defamation, when a person threatens to commit suicide in order to compel a public lawful authority to do an act or restrain from doing something, then for all these offences, community service has been provided. But what is community service has not been defined in the Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita, and it is defined in section 23 of Bharatiya Nagarika Suraksha Samhita. According to section 23 of Bharatiya Nagarika Suraksha Samhita, community service means any sentence awarded by the court aimed at rendering benefit, service to the community and which doesn't carry any remuneration. So that means community service has 3 components. It is awarded by the court, it aims at promoting the welfare and well-being of the community, and it doesn't carry any remuneration for doing such a service. Okay, next. And this act, so these are the provisions which one should definitely welcome and appreciate. But there are certain provisions which are retrograde, regressive, and bridled with and impregnated with the power impregnated with the likelihood of being misused. What are they? And chapter 5 of Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita defines offences against women and child. Definitely, offences against women and child have been given more prominent place. So, rape has been defined in section 64. Section 69 of BNS defines sexual intercourse by deceitful means. Section 69 says, whoever by deceitful means or by giving promise to marry to a woman without any intention to fulfill that promise has sexual intercourse, then that sexual intercourse not amounting to rape shall be liable to be punished with a period of 10 years and fine or both. So deceitful means has also been defined. Deceitful means luring a woman with a promise of employment, with a promise of promotion, with a promise to marry. So this section in fact undermines the very integrity of women. Because this section says women are vulnerable to accept for sexual intercourse when someone makes a promise of giving employment or promotion. So is it not undermining the women? Definitely it undermines women. Apart from this, we are seeing that stay-in relationships are growing in India, and even the Supreme Court of India has accepted stay-in relationships. So, if a man and a woman live in a stay-in relationship for 4 years or 5 years, then thereafter if the differences come up, and if the woman gives a false complaint saying that this man had promised me to marry me, and without fulfilling his promise, he had sexual intercourse with me, then this section in all likelihood would be misused and abused. So this is a regressive section for two reasons. The first reason is it undermines the woman. The second reason is this section is likely to be misused and abused in the days to come. And this Bharatiya BNS also defines certain new offences for the first time, and those offences are mob lynching in section 103. So what is mob lynching? Any 5 or more persons on the ground of caste, race, sex, language, place of birth, personal beliefs, commits murder of a person, then such person is likely to be punished with death or life imprisonment and fine. But that means mob lynching would involve at least 5 individuals. So there is a basic flaw in this section. What is it? If 4 persons or 3 persons on the ground of religion or personal beliefs of a person kills an individual, then it is not mob lynching. Very unfortunate. So this section has a conspicuous lacuna or flaw which needs to be amended. Apart from mob lynching, BNS also defines organized crime and petty organized crime in section 110 and 111 respectively. What is organized crime? Any continuous unlawful activity by 2 or more persons for committing murder, robbery, serious thefts, counterfeiting, kidnapping, and where during the last 2 years there are 2 charge sheets, then that person is said to have committed organized crime, for which imprisonment will be 10 years and it may 10 years. And similarly, petty organized crime has been defined in section 111. Petty organized crime means chain snatching. For the chain snatching for the first time has been recognized as an offence as a petty organized crime. Next, rash and negligent act. So in the IPC 304A, rash and negligent act attracted 2 years of imprisonment. But this act says, if any person by rash and negligent act causes death of a person, then the person shall be liable to be imprisoned for a period of 5 years and fine or both. However, in the case of doctors, the section has been very lenient and benevolent, saying if a doctor causes death due to rash and negligent act, then the punishment will be 2 years. Section 106, 2, subsection 2 says that if any person by rash and negligent driving causes an accident, and without reporting that accidents he fled away, he or she escapes, then it carries 10 years of imprisonment and fine. So against the 106 subsection 2, the All India Motor Workers Congress truck drivers have agitated on a large scale, saying that accidents sometimes are caused even without their intention, without their negligence, and once an accident was caused, then there is a likelihood of the public getting the driver into their hands and beating him to death. So therefore the government has said that this section would be temporarily suspended and it will be implemented with a due consultation with the public. And this section therefore has not yet been come into force. And the next important thing is section 112. Section 112 for the first time has integrated offences relating to terrorists and terrorism within the ambit of BNS, and which was not there in the Indian Penal Code. In fact, for dealing with offences relating to terrorism and terrorists, there are certain exclusive laws in India like Unlawful Activities Prevention Act 1967. But in spite of this act for the first time says if any person commits in terrorist acts by collecting arms, ammunition, bombs, and thereby creates terror in the public and acts against the sovereignty, security of India, then the Superintendent of Police shall have absolute discretion whether such person should be tried and prosecuted under the BNS or under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. So that means this section gives discretionary power to the Superintendent of Police. And you are quite aware that if there was any section in the Indian Penal Code which was grossly misused and abused, then it is indisputably section 124A dealing with sedition. So this section says if any person by his acts, words or gesture incites disaffection against lawfully elected government or incites the public to resort to violence, then it amounts to sedition. So that means even criticizing the government fairly on its policies would attract the invoking of section 124A. And in fact, many civil rights activists, human rights activists, and prominent editors were charged under sedition for criticizing government policies. So that is the reason as to why the Supreme Court has kept this section under suspension in the year 2022, saying this section has been grossly misused and abused. So the BNS doesn't contain any section in the name of sedition. So sedition as an offense has not been explicitly recognized, but sedition as an offense has been indirectly injected and imported into section 152 of the BNS. Section 152 of the BNS envisages that if any person by his acts, speech, gestures, either directly or indirectly, causes threat to the unity, integrity, security and sovereignty of India, then it is an offense punishable with imprisonment for a period of 10 years and fine. So that means what was there in section 124A has been indirectly brought under the purview of section 152. So section 152 says if any person either by his words, acts, gestures causes any act questioning the unity, integrity, security, sovereignty of India, then this section can be invoked. So what is an act? What is a gesture? What is a word that is against unity, integrity, security and sovereignty of India has not been defined anywhere in the BNS. So there is a likelihood of this section being misused in the days to come, like how section 124A has been misused. And similarly, this section, this BNS doesn't define any offense pertaining to carnal intercourse done against the will and wish of a person, including bestiality. The Supreme Court of India in Navtej Singh Johar versus Union of India has held a part of section 377 was unconstitutional, saying that if two adults or two individuals of the same sex indulge in homosexuality and that too in private chambers, then it is no more an offense. So section 377 of IPC was partly struck down. The remaining part says if any person had carnal intercourse with another person of the same sex against the wish and will of another, then it is definitely an offense. Similarly, when a person commits any act of sexuality with animals, then such bestiality is also an offense. But this BNS is absolutely silent on this, so it is a lacuna or deficiency which needs to be addressed. And apart from all this, the BNS has enhanced punishments and fines. So the punishments and fines under the IPC were somewhat very less. So the fines and penalties, penalties and imprisonment have been extended to a larger extent. So these are the changes that were introduced by the BNS. So after having a broad view on the provisions of the BNS, one could indisputably notice that whatever changes that were introduced in BNS were very insignificant, and most of the provisions of the Indian Penal Code were borrowed into BNS with the change of sections. So therefore, it is not an exaggeration to say that Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita is simply old wine in the new bottle.